The inductee tonight, James Jimmy Bates.
Thank you very much. I have to mention a few names, and hopefully these names will be recognized, of people who were very important in my life. One of them was a man that many of the older men in here will remember, worked at Superior Electric, a man by Wally Sandstrom. When I was a junior in high school, Wally Sandstrom started talking to me about college, and he took the time to drive Jimmy Tracy and myself to Wesleyan. Wally was a graduate of Wesleyan and tried to get us interested in that. And then somehow or other, the next year when I was a senior, and he found out that I had an interview at Yale, he called me up and offered to take me over to Yale to accompany me. And here was a man who I really didn't know, and yet he knew of me, and he took the time to put that kind of effort in for me. Actually, I went to Boston University because a gentleman in this room, Jerry Greger, he and I had made plans when we were younger that we were both going to go into the insurance and real estate business. And I went to Boston University because it had a major in insurance and a minor in real estate, which I graduated with. And then you wonder how I got into teaching. It's an interesting and sometimes scary story how I got into teaching. But the best thing that ever happened to me was going to Boston University because of two coaches that I had there, and the fundamentals that they taught, the way that they coached, the things that they did to make their players better were things that I carried on as I went on. The first one in my baseball coach was a man by the name of Harry Cleverly. And Harry Cleverly was more noted as a hockey coach. And he expected his baseball players to be like hockey players. I mean, hockey player, you get hit in the face with a puck and you spit your teeth out when you go back and you play. Well, the baseball hit you in the face and you spit your teeth out and you didn't look for any sympathy. You just kept right on playing. I can remember the first day at BU Field, which was the old Braves field earlier. And he would take all of the infielders out to shortstop, and he would get at the pitcher's mound. And many of the people who played for me can relate to this. He would hit from the pitcher's mound fungos at you that were coming about 1,000 miles an hour. And he would say, "Don't let the ball go by." And if the ball went by, if a ball got by anyone, he would point at the person and say, "Not in my infield. Get out there where there's a fence where the ball can be stopped." That was it. And I knew that when it came to my turn, the ball wasn't getting by. I wasn't going to even try to field it. I had made that up in my mind. I was just going down on my knees, and as long as the ball didn't go through my chest, I was going to stop it. And I was going to pick it up, and I was going to throw the ball to first base. And then, for whatever reason, he only hit me that one, and then he looked at me and said, "You can play in my infield. Get out to the station where they're practicing pivoting." And I just said, "Thank you, God, just that one ground ball." I'll tell you something, I did the same thing with my infielders. I would hit them from the pitcher's mound, and I made a lot of good outfielders for this city. Bobby Jones, who was a great center fielder and catcher for me, I used to try to make Bobby a third baseman, and he would look at me and said, "Coach, you're crazy. I'm not getting in front of that ball." And he would call me midget. He'd go like this, "I'll see you later, midget. I'm out of here." and he'd run out to center field. The other man who was very influential was a man by the name of Matt Zunick, who was my basketball coach. We called him Mad Matt, and he was 6'5", about 240 pounds, and you didn't want to get him angry. He was just one of those men who was way ahead of his time in his knowledge of the game of basketball. And I can remember the first practice, he had a rule, the first 30 minutes, that you could not do anything that you were good at. Practice would start at 3, you expected to be in the gym at 2:30, and you could not practice anything from 2:30 to 3 o'clock that you were good at. It was very simple. And I can remember the first day of practice, I came in, I took a ball out of the rack, I put the ball down 3 times with my right hand, and I said, well, what am I going to do? And next thing I knew, a whistle blew, and Coach Spence, an assistant coach, was up because there was a track running around the gym, said, Bates, get up here and give me 2 miles. What? You left-handed? No, I'm right-handed. He said, then what are you doing dribbling right-handed? I only thought I would dribble up here 2 miles. Now, one of my grandsons runs cross-country. I had never run 2 miles, and I thought I was going to die when I got done doing that. But we didn't do that at Eastern, but the way we ran things, the first 15 minutes was always ball handling. You know, the next 40 minutes we ran 8 different stations with 8 different drills going on, and blow the whistle every 5 minutes, and everyone switched stations. Because I always believed if you wanted to see if anyone was a good coach, you would all you had to do was go to their school and watch their practice. And if it was a practice where it was basically scrimmaging, you weren't going to see very good coaching. I used to take my son during the December and February vacations, and we would ride around to different high schools and watch their practice. And then when we came home, I would say, well, put a grade down. And he would grade the practices, and he was very close. Gary would be very happy to know you're the only one who ever got an A. Because you ran station drills. You didn't monkey around with scrimmaging where no one was learning anything. There were only 10 kids who were participating instead of having all 15 participating. And Coach Zunick, when I got injured and I couldn't play anymore, well, I could have played, I think, but my knee was so weak that we didn't know when it was going to give. But when I came back to the school my junior year, and this is how I got into teaching, he called me at my apartment and asked me if I'd be interested. There was a job opening at a settlement house in the center of Boston, and they needed someone to direct the athletic program there, and he asked me if I'd be interested in taking the job, and I said, sure. And he said, Jimmy, you know what it's like down there at Morgan Memorial? I said, oh my God, no. He said, that's a minefield. He said, you're right. He said, but you're going to have nothing but hard cases down there. I said, well, I can handle that. And I went down there, and I had hard cases down there. My kids didn't go to school, and no matter what time I got there, they would be sitting there. I would say out of the 10 kids that eventually I had playing basketball with me all over Massachusetts, you know, they might have averaged 50 days a year in school. But they were great players. One night I came out and they were standing around my little sports car, and I said, what's up? And then they moved away, and one of my hubcaps is gone. And I immediately threw a fit. And they looked, and they said, we don't know who took it. Well, about 2 weeks later, I walk out, and it's the same situation. They're all around my car. And then they move away, and I look, and I had brand new hubcaps. 4 brand new hubcaps. They had taken my other 3 and sold them somewhere, and borrowed 4 beautiful hubcaps from someplace else. and put them on my car. For, I would say it was a good 2 or 3 months, and my wife would not drive that car because she was firmly convinced that she was going to get stopped by a cop somewhere. But I had beautiful, beautiful hubcaps, I'll tell you. But Coach Zunick, the first introduction to him is he asked where we were from, and I said Connecticut. And he said home of the 2-1-2 zone. He said, well, and there was a man by the name of Mario Satilli who was from Weaver, and Nate Copel from New Britain. He said, well, the one thing I know the three of you can do, you can guard wood in the floor and the air around it, but I don't know if you can play basketball. He said, but we'll find out, he said, because you three guys will go into the cage every day. The cage was a little gym, which was very narrow, and banging people off the walls. And he put 3 New Jersey kids and 3 New York kids in against us. He said, now you'll learn how to play basketball. You're not going to be guarding wood in a floor or guarding the air around you. You're going to be guarding people. And Coach Spence came in with his pad, which automatically meant that you were going to end up running a few miles. And the rule was, if he beat you to your strong side, you got a check. A check was a quarter of a mile. If you fouled him, it was an eighth of a mile. If the foul you laid on the guy was a real good, hard one, there was no check. That's the way the man was. In other words, you didn't get punished if you fouled the guy real hard. Well, you can imagine what it's like now. People are coming in and you're bouncing everyone off of walls. But this is the way he believed. Last February 13th, we met in Boston because the players from his teams from 55 through 59, they wanted a new varsity locker room, and they needed $50,000, and we put together over $60,000 to dedicate a locker room to the man. And I can remember trying to run an offense, and a seam was open, but it was cross court. And he said, well, how come you're not making that pass? I said, it's cross court. You don't throw cross court passes. He said, only stupid people don't throw cross court passes. Why throw 2 passes when you only have to throw one? I can remember Mikey G almost having a heart attack when I was encouraging them to throw cross court passes. And it's amazing. The announcers today talk about diagonal passes and skip passes. Now visualize this. What is a diagonal pass? It's a cross-court pass. And what is a skip pass? You don't pass to this guy, you pass to that guy. It's a cross-court pass. I mean, Matt Zunick was doing those things 40 years before these people say it. And why do the announcers say diagonal and skip passes? Because they don't want to get 1,000 telephone calls and email saying they're telling them you're not supposed to throw cross-court passes. He was a man who was far ahead of his time. And the importance of those 2 men to me was that they taught me not only about the game and how to play the game, but they taught me how people were supposed to be coached. And that fundamentals were the basics to all success. I have so many former players that are here, and I think my players know how much I love them, and they also know how much that I respect them. I'm going to just close by telling a couple of things. The dumbest thing I ever did. My wife is pulling out the list now. I think she brought a roll of toilet paper with her and wrote all of these things down. We were having our pictures taken at Muzzy Field. And 2 of my players were late for the picture taking, so when we got back in the dugout, I immediately sent them home. Now you have to realize we had 2 games left in the season and we were tied for first place with West Hartford, and I'm sending 2 people home. And as they left, I just realized, now you're in trouble. You just sent your 2 catchers home and you don't have a catcher. It's a difficult game, you see, when you don't have a catcher. So now I go around and I said, who has ever caught here before? And Johnny Bukowski, who was a fireman in Bristol, he raised his hand and said, Mr. Bates, I caught 1 inning or a couple innings when I was in Little League. I said, you're the catcher, John. And now I said to myself, now should I change my pitchers? I had Henry Tchaikovsky, who had a tremendous curveball that fell right off a table, and Rich Gerard, whose curveball was a little flatter. But anyway, I went with my original intention, and we won the game. The most unusual thing I ever did, and I did only because I felt we couldn't beat West Hartford. West Hartford had beaten us 3 times, and I decided we had to throw a little change of pace in there to perhaps beat them. And so instead of getting there early like we usually did, I held up the bus and I wouldn't go for batting practice. And then when we got to West Hartford, I had made up my mind that there are number 1 and 2 hitters who were real pains, who hit line drives, ground balls, and they'd get on and they'd steal bases on you, that against them I was going to play only 2 outfielders and I was going to play an extra infielder. So I had a third baseman, I had a shortstop, and I had a guy that was playing 1 step to the shortstop side, a second baseman. I only had 2 outfielders. So now these kids are coming up and they're looking out and they're seeing wide open spaces in the outfield, and so they're trying to jack home runs. Beautiful. That's just what I wanted them to do. And when their 3, 4, and 5 hitters came up, I played 4 outfielders. And I had Jimmy Ziogas was all by himself on the right side against the right-handed hitters. And the amazing thing, now these guys who were tremendous hitters and were home run hitters, now all of a sudden they're trying to hit ground balls through the hole. Good, I'll give them a single every time. But anyway, one of the shots, Eddie Smith ran down about 420 feet into left center. But the only reason he ever got to it is all he had to do was just keep backpedaling until the ball came down. But these were little things. Sometimes you have to give your team a chance to win. And the thing the 1966 kids always think about is that they brought a plaque like this over before the state finals, and it was a second place trophy, and they wanted us to have the picture taken. I said, we don't come to play for second place. I said, we're not having our pictures taken. I said, take the picture over there and have Waterbury have it taken with the second place trophy. That's what, because that's the one they're going home with. Now, I had to be stupid because the first game of the tournament, Waterbury had beaten us 23-4. 23-4, and now to win the state championship, we had to beat Waterbury 2 games in a row, which doesn't seem possible, but we did it, which was a tremendous thrill. But as far as basketball goes, the one last thing is the proudest moment I ever had in sports was the team I coached my last year. 15 players who went to college. I doubt that there's any high school in the state of Connecticut that can claim that. 14 of the 15 graduated from college. The one who didn't graduate from college is the one I worked the hardest to get into college, into the college that he wanted, a fine school up in New York, Ithaca. And one day when my son was coaching freshman basketball at Eastern, I walked into the school to watch the freshman game, and this kid was walking out of the gym, and he took a look to his left, and he saw me walking into the building, and the next thing I knew, he was 100 yards down the hallway. I guess he knew what I was thinking about doing, and he got out of there in time. To my former players, to my grandchildren, try to be the best that you can be. That doesn't mean you have to be the best. but it does mean you have to try to be the best. Thank you.